Welcome back to The Lead. Continuing our national lead with more of my exclusive interview with President Obama. The first following his State of the Union address. The president has been quite candid about his use of marijuana as a younger man. So candid, in fact, that some wonder just how much he supports the restrictions on pot as spelled out by his own administration's policies. And that's where we pick up my conversation with the president right now. Another big issue in this country right now has to do with the legalization of marijuana. You gave an interview to the New Yorker's David Remnick, and you said that you thought smoking pot was a bad habit, but you didn't think it was any worse for a person than drinking. Now, that contradicts the official Obama administration policy, both on the website of the Office of National Drug Control policy, and also the fact that marijuana is considered a Schedule I narcotic along with heroin and ecstasy. Now, do you think you were maybe talking just a little too casually about it with Remnick and the New Yorker, or are you considering not making marijuana a Schedule I narcotic?
Well, first of all, what is and isn't a Schedule I narcotic is a job for Congress.
I think it's the DEA that decides that.
It's not something by ourselves that we start changing. No, there are laws undergirding those determinations.
Would you support that move?
But the broader point, I stand by my belief, based, I think, on the scientific evidence, that marijuana for casual users, individual users, is subject to abuse just like alcohol is, and should be treated as a public health problem and challenge. But as I said in the interview, my concern is when you end up having very heavy criminal penalties for individual users that have been applied unevenly and in some cases with a racial disparity. And I think that is a problem. Over the long term, what I believe is if we can deal with some of the criminal penalty issues, then we can really tackle what is a problem not just for marijuana, but also alcohol, also cigarettes, also harder drugs, and that is try to make sure that our kids don't get into these habits in the first place. And the incarceration model that we've taken, particularly around marijuana, does not seem to have produced the kinds of results that we've set. But I do offer a cautionary note, and I said this in the interview. Those who think legalization is a panacea, I think they have to ask themselves some tough questions too. Because if we start having a situation where big corporations with a lot of resources and distribution and marketing arms are suddenly going out there peddling marijuana, then the levels of abuse that may take place are going to be higher.
When your Director of National Intelligence, General James Clapper, testified before Congress and said, before the Snowden leaks, that there was no mass surveillance going on. A lot of Democrats in the Senate think that he was not honest. He said later that it was the least untruthful answer he could give. I know that you have faith in Clapper. I know that you believe that these programs protect the American people. But I can't believe that you weren't disappointed by his answer, because least untruthful is not a phrase I remember hearing on the campaign trail.
I think that Jim Clapper himself would acknowledge and has acknowledged that he should have been more careful about how he responded. His concern was that he had a classified program that he couldn't talk about, and he was in an open hearing in which he was asked, he was prompted to disclose a program, and so he felt that he was caught between a rock and a hard place.
So you understand what he did?
Subsequently, I think he's acknowledged that he could have handled it better. He's spoken to Mr. Wyden personally. I think the broader point is that everybody that I've dealt with in our intelligence community is really working hard to try to do a very tough job, protect us when there are constant threat streams coming at us, but doing so in a way that's consistent with the law and consistent with our Constitution, consistent with our privacy rights. I am actually confident that we can continue to have the best intelligence service in the world, but win back the confidence of both the American people as well as folks overseas, But it's going to take some time. It's going to take some work, partly because the technology has just moved so quickly that the discussions that need to be had didn't happen fast enough, didn't happen on the front end. And I think that we have the opportunity now to move forward in a way that is going to make a difference.
A lot of members of Congress, and not just like the fringe ones, the ones who actually are serious lawmakers, have said to CNN that they would not let their family members go to Sochi, that they are not confident that it will be safe. You see all the intelligence. I know that you're not going. I know Michelle and Sasha and Malia are not going. But if close friends of yours or close friends of the girls said, hey, we're thinking about going, what would you tell them?
I tell them that I believe that Sochi is safe and that there are always some risks in these large international gatherings. I'm always going to feel even better if it's inside the United States, because then we have full control over what happens. But the Russian authorities understand the stakes here. They understand that there are potential threats that are out there, and we are coordinating with them. We've looked at their plans. I think we have a good sense of the security that they're putting in place to protect not only the athletes themselves but also visitors there. So what I would say is that if you want to go to the Olympics, you should go to the Olympics. And we're not discouraging in any way Americans from participating in what is just always an amazing, wonderful event. In these large settings like this, there are always some risks involved. And I don't want to completely discount those. But as we've seen here in the United States, and at the Boston Marathon, I mean, there were some risks if you have lone wolves or small cells of folks who are trying to do some damage.
I just want to say, as somebody who's covered the war in Afghanistan, the moment where you honored Sergeant First Class Corey Remsburg at the State of the Union, I felt was a very moving and important moment. And what I admired about it was the nation so many times doesn't seem to want to know the costs of war, and seeing him and his struggle, I thought was very important for the country to see.
The biggest honor I have is serving as Commander-in-Chief. And you meet these amazing people every single day. But they're carrying a big burden. And, on the one hand, we've got this all-volunteer army that makes it outstanding. These are people who want to serve, who are eager to serve, who are trained to serve. We've never had a better military in our history. But it also means only 1% of the American people are in harm's way, and their families are the ones who are bearing that burden. Which means that when we make decisions about war, it is that much more important for lawmakers and the president to understand that there are consequences to this. And I think folks like Corey are the first ones to say, we volunteer because we want to defend this country. And what we accomplished in Afghanistan in terms of pushing back the core of al-Qaeda has been critical to our national security. But as I said at the State of the Union, I am not, as Commander-in-Chief, going to be sending our young men and women into open-ended conflicts or deploying our troops in large numbers overseas without thinking about folks like Corey before I send them. And it's the most profound, solemn decision that any president makes. I'm sure that was true for all my predecessors and will be true for my successors. All of us as Americans have to just keep that in mind, that just because there isn't a draft, and just because this is an all-volunteer army, that the burdens that are being carried by this small group of Americans is profound, and we owe them thanks. We owe them all the support they deserve once it's over.
Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
When we come back, just what power does the president have to change marijuana classification? Well, perhaps a little bit more than he says.